Yeah.
We are the epitome of Black female love.
Yeah.
Easy for us as black women to hold up the banner and the cause for everyone else. But again, who holds up the banner and the cause for
that we as a black church are perpetuating the same behavior as a patriarchal evangelicals have been
That's
doing.
right.
Hey, ladies. Hello, hello,
Hello.
and hello. Hello. So, how are you all doing? Let's Bradford, are you traveling? How's it coming? What's going on with you? How you be?
Oh, okay. So we'll start with me. So
Mhm.
I, I excuse me. I was in Austin on yesterday, last evening rather. Dr. Renita Weems did a lecture at Seminary Southwest, and it was amazing.
In
Mm.
Austin. Okay.
Yes, and it was, yeah, it was. She talked about Huldah
Mm.
and Genesis 11. Just it was so rich, so rich. But she's an Old Testament scholar. So anyway, that was an amazing evening and a rich evening. I think just sitting in the place and receiving rather than always pouring out. It was it was a great evening to receive. Yeah. So yeah, that was last week. Next week, of course, Houston. Following week, Atlanta. So that's life, though, right?
Wow. Want to
Busy
hear
living.
more about that with Hoda. Wow, want to hear more about that. And Dr. Wallace, I know that you were up at the Proctor conference, and we supposed to glean from the table where you were sitting at, and needing to be able to kind of get some good eating from that table
Yeah.
for us. So how you doing? And viewing audience, we have part two on today. You want to get your friends in to hear
Look,
this on today.
no,
Get
you
them in, get them in, get them in. But Dr. Wallace, how are you doing?
I am
Good to
doing
see you,
well.
Grandma.
I am grateful. I just got back from the Proctor conference, and it was, as Dr. Bradford said, amazing. It was amazing in Austin. It was also extremely amazing in Chicago. The two things that I really pulled and gleaned from it was the social justice agenda,
Mhm.
and
Mm.
secondly, the women of the rock.
Oh yeah.
And that was done by one of our former guests,
Melba,
Melva Sampson.
Dr.
And
Melba
it was
Simpson.
and Dr. Taylor, I believe her name is.
Mhm.
It was really amazing. Uh, the nightly worship services were off the chain. Um, and I'm grateful. I got a list of seminary students that I have sent information to for hopefully they may want to do online CPE if they can't do.
All right.
Um,
Yes.
I also try to recruit students that might even want to go to Oklahoma City for that can get paid. They can get paid from CPEO, but they can get paid in at Oklahoma City VA as a resident or a fellow when they once they've had at least one unit of CPE. So
Yes.
I was recruiting students, and it was I was pleasantly surprised at the number of students that responded and gave me some contact information to follow up with them. So that was I was pleasantly pleased and
Mm.
surprised. So
Oh.
you guys pray with me and for me as CPEO has to go through an accreditation for the next 6 years, and I am just in the midst of doing all of the documentation for that accreditation review, and it's been overwhelming, but thanks be to God, I got friends that will help me breathe and work through one thing at a time.
Yeah.
I'm
Wow.
excited.
Oh,
What's going on with
wow.
you, Burns? How are you doing?
Well, I am doing wonderfully well. Had a meeting in Atlanta on Thursday, and then was in South Carolina, and then South Carolina on Saturday, North Carolina on Sunday, and back here in DC on Monday. We're doing our Kingdom First Ministries. We're doing our Seal by Fire. Bishop Vincent Drummer is our prophetic apostle, who is what we call as anchored it for us. He was with us in Dallas, and it was just absolutely God amazing. A woman who had been afflicted with a stroke for 12 years, needed to be assisted into the church, came in with the cane. We saw healing with her as she shouted and praised herself around the church.
Oh
You know,
Lord,
and so
oh Lord, that is
you know,
Yes, Lord. Do it, God.
that is
so,
amazing.
yeah, so it was just absolutely God awesome, just a God awesome. Just so grateful for God in this season. We have our last Seal by Fire calling all the prophets in Orlando in two weekends on March 9th. And the host church there, Freedom Fellowship of Central Florida, they've decided we're going to do a tent revival
Oh
Yeah.
Lord,
style. And so we'll have two major prophetic apostles, Bishop Drummer and Bishop Designate Cynthia West. And we're just excited. I'm just excited about God in this season. So God's blessed me on the ministry side. God's blessing me on the secular side. I's just a happy Black woman. I's grateful. Yeah. So yeah,
Thank
I'm doing.
I love it.
And so we bless God for that. You all, thank you for asking. Viewing audience, listen. On last week, we literally, and we're gonna Dr. Wallace is gonna give a brief introduction again, but I just need to say this part. You need to get your sisters. You need y'all who married, want to be married, y'all who have brothers, all them other folk. But this really for those married, want to be married, folk. Get your significant other with you and watching this broadcast so they can tap you and say, yeah, he own it. What he's saying is right, it's true.
Yes.
We ended our conversation on last Tuesday, and I mean the questions were firing in. We had a whole lot, and time was up, and Dr. Wallace begged our guest to come back and to rearrange his schedule. And so, Dr. Wallace, if you will, but you all light, tag, and share. You all, I'm telling you, if you need to jump off for a moment to call somebody and say, hey, I'm tagged. You got to see this broadcast because you don't want to miss this on
Yes.
today. All right,
yes.
Dr. Wallace.
Thank you. My good friend, the Reverend Dr. Willie Godman, is our guest again. He is one of the associate professors at the ITC. He is a therapist, and he has been working with mentoring African American men. And part of what we left off last week was about communications with and how African American women could help facilitate communications with our brothers. And I'm excited that Dr. Gottman said he would come back and share with our audience some things that we just need to know. Um, we often criticize our African American men, but there's some issues that I think Dr. Gottman has shared with us that for the health of our Black men, the mental health of our Black men, we need to hear as Black women. So I am so grateful, Dr. Gottman, for your work around mental health and Black men. And thank you, brother, for coming back to see us again.
But thank you, Dr. Brenda, and thank you to the ladies who are a part of women, rather. I apologize. The women who are part of this cohort and working this broadcast, Timely Wisdom. Thank you so much, and I am excited to be back as well because this allows me opportunities to talk out loud in other venues uh, about the work that I've been doing for near now 20 years. Lord have mercy.
Wow.
I think we met over 20 years ago. And you were working in the therapy area and I'm in the CPE area,
Right.
and our spirits just kind of joined at the hip, and we've been supporting each other ever since. And I am grateful to you for coming to be with us again tonight.
Thank
So let's talk about communications again. And I think that's, as Dr. Burns said, that's where we left off last week, and got some fiery um, comments in our comment section. And so we need some hope again, not just help, but we need some hope with and how we communicate with our brothers. So I just want you to kind of, I think Dr. Burns had said we needed to revisit that conversation. So if you could set us up again about how uh, what's helpful or might be helpful, um, that to maintain for African American men, and what we as African American women might be able to do when it talks about what they need. The African descended men do not need to be tweaked. Is I think is the term you use. So how do we work with that? How do we what does that mean to not tweak, and what does tweak mean? Um, I'm curious about that one. Help us.
Well, what I mean by that is that oftentimes the way African descended men experience um, women, other men, social stations, social conditions, social placement, is that if we just fix them or just do a little tweaking, just do a little adjustment, they'll be okay.
Mm.
And so when African descended men experience that, at least in the populations and the work that I have, that where I have been working, when that is experienced, um, it's not considered respectful. It's not considered being attentive or experiencing themselves as being attended to. Now, it's not about weakness. It's not about pathology. It's not about not having sense of agency, but it is the core of how African descended men often experience being related to.
Mm.
So being related to as a problem
Mm.
that needs to be solved, or a problem that needs to be adjusted, or a problem that needs to be fixed. Um, and so when considered to be a problem, then if we just plug in this, or we just plug in something that plug in a support, or plug in a the right word, or we just plug in an opportunity, then African descended men would be okay. Um, and so the plug in is generally experienced as being brought to a space or brought to a place to function the way whoever's making the plug in desires.
Mm.
Whoever's doing the adjustment is asking African descended men to function in that way. And that's challenge in this Western hemisphere is about 450 years old.
Mm.
Oh, wait. So you're saying that that technique is considered a slavery or slave mentality technique.
Yes,
Mhm.
is how to enslave.
So
Mm.
I have this question. So if there is, quote, a problem, you don't address the problem?
You address the problem, you address,
Hmm.
You
but
don't.
as African descended men, the problem is not being a African descended man. The problem is cultural. The problem is economic. The problem is assumptions about around stereotypes.
Mm.
The problem is design functioning. And so African descended men have been acculturated to function in a particular way. And so what African descended men are often working against is the programming.
And this programming is what I'm hearing. If I'm hearing you correctly, it stems from how African descended men were emasculated from slavery to today.
And not only emasculated, but absolutely of no value aside from their functioning, their performance. Performance to children, the performance to farm, the performance to make everybody else happy, to the performance to ensure everybody else is stable and expected to maintain that in degrees of silence, because if they spoke up, it was a possibility, it's likely probability to be killed.
Mm.
To be what now?
Killed.
So if they spoke up, they would. There's a likelihood that they would. And I can. I'm trying to wrap my head around this because I can see that oftentimes when African American men are uh, are angry and they have the very right to be angry, they are very much like African American women, that the angry black man, the angry black woman, so they're not listened to.
Right.
Um, so I'm
And
but
force
I'm struggling though.
and force is brought to bear to to retrain or to reprogram, or if they're not reprogrammable, then they are executed.
Okay, so um, I and I believe that you might be doing this. I don't want us to miss this. Rosalind Leslie is saying, explain the culture, break it down, and how I think you're beginning to do that. Um, when you're talking about the programming, it, maybe I missed a piece. Let me let you keep talking.
Okay, what I mean by this, what I mean by that is, um, a story that was, and part of this is also related out of my family. Um, my grandfather, and then other men like him, sometimes would refuse to farm or would refuse to work, but they would not tell the person who they worked for that they weren't going to work, but their wives would tell that.
Would tell the master or the work or the employer.
Yes, the wives would tell the master or the employer they're not going to work anymore, because the women were allowed space to be dissonant, where the men were not allowed that space. And so the women could actually articulate. And then the husband would be in the house or the husband would move on to do whatever the husband's going to do, because the culture would not allow that man to stand for what he knew was correct.
Oh, I have so much
Okay.
to say right there, but I think
Go ahead and say it. Go ahead and say it, Bradford, because your questions might, what you have to say might be more in line than what I have to say.
So you're saying, let's see if I can. They send the women to talk to the massa, in your words, to convey the message that they would like to, or they would like to share.
The woman is much more tolerable, tolerated.
But it's okay, if I may, Dr. Godman. But we're sending the women in to receive the fire.
To send the women in to receive the fire, but where it becomes complex is that we applaud the women for doing the work, for doing that work, and then make the man a degenerate, when it is an adaptation to a system that does not respect either of them.
Okay.
My question though, based on what you just said, who applauds the woman, the Black woman?
Well, the normative narrative.
Because today
you're saying the system. I think what I'm hearing you say though is, and I have a little bit of experience with this in corporate America. They would hire African American women because they felt that they were more tolerable than African American men. And but African American women disagreed with the normative culture. It was not as
offensive
to the normative culture. But if a man did the African American male did the exact same thing, they would, like you say, become a degenerate or be perceived.
I'm hearing this. Dr. Amanade, author, has this question, and I think while she tried to bring in the 21st century, she says we're in the 21st century. Please make it plain for how this applies today for us.
The way it applies today is that see here. I'm sorry. I'm toggling between two things here. The George Floyd is a primary example. George Floyd was targeted and eventually killed because, notwithstanding what may have happened with the cigarettes or what may happen with the store, but he was targeted and treated badly and eventually killed because he dared to resist arrest. Young boys going in stores, in my own journey, going in stores, being profiled. I'm not there to steal anything. I'm not there to be destructive, but security people will follow me. I am 100 years old.
So my question to you in that, and because we're really at the place of of trying to understand so that we can communicate best. Black women, I know you say African descended women to African descended men, but George Floyd, in the example that you use, he's killed. But for Black women, we're raped and beat. And so I guess I'm trying to understand what it is that I still don't understand. Let me just say.
The first question that came up or the discussion was the tweaking.
Uh-huh.
And I'm still trying to understand the tweaking. When you talked about the women or the men don't like to be tweaked.
Mm-hmm.
I really want you to dive into what is the tweaking. Explain the tweaking and
The tweaking is, let me see here. If I can just, oftentimes, African descendant men will experience is that persons will figure out what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do this, then I can get from you what I want. If I make sure you have this and this, then I can make sure I get what I'm looking for from you. That's tweaking, because oftentimes it's not a question of, it's not a concern or interest as what do you bring beyond what I see you can provide.
Okay, so that sounds like managing.
Uh-huh.
Fixing is a word you used earlier.
You use fixing, but I hear managing as well.
Right.
So how if you don't want to be tweaked, what is the language or the behavior that you're actually looking for to have a better conversation, as we talked about last week?
Is to know that we are relating, that we are connecting, that we are in a relationship. Now, to be in a relationship, here's what African descendant men often have to address. There are systems in place that tell African descendant men how they are to function, how they are to perform, but there are often not supports in place to help with the functioning and the performance. There's often not structures in place. You tell a young boy, you can do whatever you want to do. But if there are not structures in place in school, there are not structures in place in family, there's not structures in place in neighborhoods to help them to dream and imagine what they want to do, and then help them to work it through, to plan, to foster, to encourage, to explore. If those structures are not in place, then what African descendant men do is they figure out how to do it themselves. Okay. And so in figuring out how to do it themselves, the disappointment of not experiencing themselves as supported, it shows up in family, then shows up in work, shows up in church, shows up in all areas. And so that is in the term, this injury, this narcissistic injury that they're working through, they're working on, that they're trying to process through this narcissistic injury, does not get addressed. But what they learn to do is adapt. They learn to look the part. And so when people observe them, if they have not adapted well enough or have not adjusted well enough, then say, well, we just do this, or we just give them this resources, if we just do this, but if we just provide this kind of support, if we provide this kind of job, then they'll be better off. When the system itself has not set a space for that in the beginning, but it's only provided as a means of adjusting. Okay.
All right. Okay. Now, I'm starting to go there. Your work is around African descent men, right?
Correct.
And mental health.
Yes.
And we talk about the stigmas in our community as a whole, Black women and men and women, but it's harder for the Black man to go to get the care that they need. And you shared that last week that your work is around this area.
Framing as good enough mentor.
Right. So how last week, I think Dr. Amanada talked about putting the onus on the woman. But if the man is not willing to do the work, I don't care what the woman does, it's going to be irrelevant. We're still going to have the same issues because we have, and I think someone shared it in the chat, both men and women have issues communicating because they have the systems, whatever you shared earlier, has indoctrinated them to operate as such.
So the work is to address the system that put African women to the place of being in charge.
Your part of your volume went out. So you said the work is
to address the systems that push African American, African descended women to be in charge.
And we bought into being in charge, is what you're saying. And so even though both men and women are struggling for mental health,
I've been traumatized.
Hold,
from the trauma.
Wallace, I need to hear this clarification on what you're about to say. Be in charge of what?
What?
Family, community, jobs, health, well-being, everything. To be in charge, because this African descended male, this man who I'm connected with, is not going to do what needs to be done in order for us to be secure and safe and well.
Ooh, run that back. run that back. You took us too fast. I need you to run it back.
So in charge, I believe, start with in charge of what? And I think that's where you started with family, in charge of the family, in charge of
children,
in
charge of the house, to be in charge of budgeting, to be in charge of managing, to be in charge of stability, to be in charge of the family, of self, to be in charge of what it takes for me as an African descendant woman to be okay, to feel comfortable.
Ooh, wait. Dr. Godman. Okay, can we go back to the culture or the system that has pushed women, Black women, African descendant women, to be in control?
To feel as if I don't do it, it's not going to get done.
So African American women believe, from what I'm hearing you say, that if we don't do something, nothing will get done.
It's not going to get done, and that's the system. That's internalized. If I'm insulting somebody, I apologize.
It's fine. Just deal with it.
Internalized white supremacy.
So let me ask you this question, because I can understand what you're saying theory wise, but what about the women that are in relationship with men that are not getting anything done? And so we're not talking about a system, we're talking about them trying to navigate. How do they communicate with the men in their lives who are not getting done what they promised that they would do? So how do they communicate to them?
The question is, what put that relationship in space and in place in the beginning?
I can hear that. I can hear that question.
Mhm. What put it? What put
Well,
it?
well,
So
I can hear that
what put it in
question.
the beginning? And so
Mhm.
then the two of them, if they're unwilling, and I have done, and I have said this as well. If you are working with men who are unwilling to do the work that is necessary to heal self, you can't heal them.
Mm-hmm. We got it. We got that.
Yes,
You can't
yes.
heal them.
We
And
okay
so,
with that.
okay, you can't heal them. So then ask the question. Then get to the question as to what's going on. What's going on? How did we what happened so that if you said this, what were you trying to get from me that you thought would not be beneficial? What did you think that you need to say?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the woman asked, the man asked, what did you get from me? Or what did you think I was going to give you that was not clearly articulated? Now that's dangerous ground because most of
I
the
was just about
time,
to say that sound like fireworks to me.
it
I
is
just
power.
I see holes in the wall and everything else. That just sounds like fireworks.
And the system has set us to be volatile and
Mm,
destructive
At odds with each other is what I'm
at
hearing you say.
odds.
yeah.
The
Rather
system,
than so how do we help our African? Well, maybe not help because I think that's the problem right there. How will African American men see for themselves the need for mental health
it
and work toward getting that mental health, the stability of good enough mental health?
good enough mentoring. It is an encouragement to build and form relationships with another African descended male who can go to the place of pain and suffering and hurt with them.
So what I'm hearing is
And it's going to be hard for us to do that because there's just so much distrust between African descended men. There's so much alienation between African descended men. There's so much isolation between African descended men. There's so much, and all of that's cultural. All of that's cultural to create this alienation because if we talk to each other as African descended men and talk honestly and earnestly with each other as African descended men, talk healthfully, not about sex, not about, sex is necessary, okay. Not about money, money is necessary, okay. Not about prowess, prowess is necessary, okay. But to work through the football game, okay. Whatever the venue is, talk about that. Help us to know that when we talk in those terms, another male is not going to take advantage of you, is not going to default on you.
so that implies that the African American descended woman is going to take advantage, or it is perceived that the African American woman is taking advantage of the African descended male.
And that's the culture, that's the programming, that's the deception.
And stems from white supremacy is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes.
And as
Doctor,
a lot of
this question is asked by a viewer only.
And so if all Black men are broken, you're saying that it will take other broken men to fix them.
All Black men are not broken.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
All black men are not broken.
Mm-hmm.
All Black men, and I have some definitional distinctions here. But that's another conversation. All
Mhm.
black men are not broken. All black men are working, and the conversations that we have, as they are healthful and beneficial, we discover that we can, and black men do talk to other black men.
Mm-hmm.
Those conversations are healthful, and discussion about what's well-being for you, brother.
Mm.
What's wholeness for you, brother? What's would what is your aspiration,
Mm-hmm.
and how are you working toward that achievement?
So Dr. Godman, when you when we're in those circles, whether it be men or women, I do appreciate your perspective because I'm not a man. I don't walk in that area. But if the men are in the circle and they're all experiencing the same thing, who's going to help who?
The
Mhm.
good mentor,
Say that
The
again.
who?
the good enough mentor,
Okay,
Oh.
I like that.
and,
So
and that's what I provide. That's my work.
right. So if they're just sitting in that same circle, doing what they do, bashing whatever, bashing the systems, if you will, how that lets me know that there is no desire in the circle to get the help that they actually need. Because if we're all in the same boat, we're all in the same circle, doing the same things, saying the same things, I'm not going to get the help that I need. At some point, I got to step out of that circle.
And which is why I'm saying find a good enough mentor.
Mm-hmm.
But doc, we don't
Yeah.
change until there is some pain.
Mhm.
Normally, and I'm trying to wrap my head around when is African American women tend to recognize their pain sooner and are willing to maybe do what's necessary to become healthier.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm seeing, what I've experienced with some African American men, when the pain is there, they back away rather than lean into the pain
Mm-hmm.
to get the help that they need.
Right.
That's a problem that I have observed.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
And the challenge is they're not sure there's going to be somebody there who can help, who can support them through.
And African American women, you're saying, is not that place. It's
But,
another man has to be in that space.
and what I'm saying is African American women often create those circles for themselves where there is support for you. African descent, where you get down to childbirth, where you get down to um, what your body is doing, where you get down to your frustration with your relationships.
Because we support each other, and I can
In, in that way,
mm-hmm,
African
mm-hmm.
men, because and so you all build kind of relationships that help you to know that there's a possibility that somebody will be there to support me through this. The work of African men is building relationships where they can discover there will be somebody there who will support me through this, and
Okay, so
brother who will help me
okay,
support me through
so
this.
so so I hear you, Dr. Wallace. I hear you, Dr. Goodman. Since there seems to be as you talked about, system and culture of lack of trust,
Mm-hmm.
because my consistent experience has been that when it comes to counseling or groups, it's that black men just they don't trust the other black men. It's very hard to get them into those spaces, whether it be one-on-one, whether it be in a group space, if some other activity is not involved. They'll go to a game, hang out, da da da. But because of also the sexualization of black men, leaders and others who perhaps might have impure motives toward them, got all these other kind of questions that are there. So my question then comes back to kind of like how we started the conversation on last week, that since it is that 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 if there is a woman, a partner, sexual partner, wife that they trust, how does a woman, their partner, their significant other, what are the things that she needs? What are the steps so that she can begin to help break down some of those walls that he might have, so we can get to what's really going on with him?
What's the earliest ask? I see you not going to the doctor. What's going on? That's the upfront question. I see you not going to the doctor, and I see you're losing. Are you losing weight?
Mm.
No, I'm good. I'm good. You seem. Are you more breathy? I'm just, So it's this conversation about what is being observed, and then being observed, and then one of the heavy questions I always suggest to folks is, do you believe I'm invested in you?
Mm.
I like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I like that. So instead of stating the facts or what you see,
Mm-hmm.
you ask the question
Mm-hmm.
rather than stating
Or you can
the
state, but then
statement.
also you get to, do you believe I'm in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is important. I do.
Mm-hmm.
And if
I
you don't,
Because once they see that you are believe, they can articulate that they believe you are invested in them,
mm-hmm.
begin a process.
then maybe some of the conversations can open up.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Right.
for
Dr. Gottman.
Can get to the deep, can get to the some of the core, some of the core things which have been adapted for. If
Mm-hmm.
if I've been a football player my whole life, if I've been prowess, if I've been strong, if I've been virile my whole life, I notice. I'm talking as African descendant male, and African descendant men notice when things change about them,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not sure somebody is there who will accept them if the change.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I understand that. I do. Um,
And they may not even be sure their wife or their significant lover will accept them with that change. I've always, because as an African descendant male in that relationship, have always functioned in a particular way. The programming says I've got to function this way. I cannot change my behavior. I cannot change my presentation, because if I change my behavior and presentation, then I'm considered less than what was considered to be beneficial.
so the belief is that vulnerability is not their friend.
It's not different.
So if you could share what are the qualities of a good enough mentor? This comes from Dr. Amanada.
Good enough mentor is one who sits and listens and pays attention to stories that are told, and listens and observe and listens for patterns, listens for what's frustrating, some basic therapeutic interventional tools, um, and then helps that help and in the conversation helps exchange relatedness. I understand this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I appreciate this. Then begin to say, have you considered the possibility of, and whatever it could be, race, ethnicity, economics, have you considered the possibility of spirituality and growth? Whatever might, as the conversation lends itself, have you considered?
Mm-hmm.
And so that creates this space where, as the mentor, the good enough mentor, is there's not really, I'm not really trying to put you in any place. I really want to understand and appreciate where you are and where you're coming from.
But that can happen with both African American female
Words out of my mouth.
as well as another African American male. Am I, or is it?
It can happen, but the cultural issue of often understanding or appreciating women, trying to tweak African descended men to get out of them what they're looking for, the stability. That's the cultural normalization. That gets in the way. So when you work through all of that, you work through that stuff. I'm not trying to get anything out of you. And I'm not trying to take advantage of you. I'm not trying to break you down. Any of that. I am invested in your well-being. Can you believe that? And if you can't believe that, then what is the challenge?
And that takes time, Dr. Godman. And when you develop a relationship, then you're able to tear down some of those walls, or just stand there and just wait. And I think in any relationship, patience has to be at the top. It has to be a top priority. And those same qualities can work either way, on both ends, right?
Yes. And so for the good enough mentoring, what my mind set is where it really gets to the point. Where if I'm in the room with another African descended man, and we look across the room and we see each other, and we instantly recognize and discern what the distinction is, what's needed, because we have so much in common. Our work is to then begin to put it into words so that it is not only internal, but is articulated. And then as you are articulated, then you can go home to your family. As you articulate it, then you can go home to your spouse. As you articulate it, you can work differently with your children. As you get this comfort space, you have someone who tells you what you are dealing with is not strange, it's not odd, it is part of what we as African descended men work with all the time.
Wow.
So do not.
I can't believe. Wow. I can't believe we're at time.
Not again.
This
Goodness.
question has come up, and you might have answered it, but just to be very clear in this, can a woman be a good enough mentor to her man?
Can a woman be a good enough mentor to her man as they build a relationship? And so then the vice versa question is, can a man be a good enough mentor for a woman?
Okay. And the answer is?
If they build a relationship that works that way.
So why is the answer different?
I thought I said it the same.
Okay. I may have heard it differently then. Okay.
Because ultimately, that's the reason we do relationships, is because we're looking for somebody who we can count on, who will be with us through thick and thin, up and down, right and wrong, good and bad. And so, but what good enough mentoring responds to is the cultural degradation that is instilled in all of us. The cultural alienation.
Wow.
My work targeted African descended men because when I began the work, there was limited engagement of the mental health of African descended men.
Mhm.
We were
Wow.
problems that needed to be solved. And we're still problems that need to be
I mean, it's necessary work, and I know we have 2 minutes, actually 3 minutes. It's necessary work, but I still believe, and I'm going to say, our brothers must have the desire to do the work.
Yes, must have the desire to do the work, and we must create the spaces where that can happen.
Now that is good right there. Yeah.
Dr. Godwin, thank you so much. Please hang around backstage for us. Viewing audience, this conversation part 2 has blessed you. Please, please, please put it in chat. And perhaps in the fall that he might find some time in his schedule to come back and join us again.
Part 3, part 4, and part 5.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I'll hold mine to backstage.
Yes.
Thank you, Sasha. Thank you so
Thank you.
My brother. Thank you so much.
Great time.
Yes. This has been good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You all put it in the chat. 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 Put it in the chat.
We have, I know, 2 minutes now. This has been great. Wallace, you've been married how long?
You celebrated 51, 52.
I'm moving into my 52nd year here in May. Will be 52 years. So I've been it's close to 52. And yet I think we both realize that we'll be there for each other. I don't doubt that at all.
Yeah.
But I also still think that there is space for additional mental health work on both our parts. But what I did find is that when I got mental health and started getting healthy, my whole family began to get healthy. So it just one person can improve the mental health of the family.
But now you're talking. Okay,
ladies, I love y'all. Our time is up.
We
got it. We got to go. God bless.
Girl.